Thank you. Good morning, church, and happy Sabbath. May you all stand for a scripture reading. Our scripture reading is taken from Luke 15:31-32. I am reading from the New King James Version. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad. For your brother was dead, and he is alive again, and was lost and is found. The scriptures, and you all may sit down.
Amen. Thank you. Good morning. Happy Sabbath. All right. All right, let me get that going. And I did not forget the translation today, so we can all hear and understand. All right. How many of you are happy that it's getting warmer? Well, you don't have to like it. I know some people like it cold and still they raise their hand, but that's fine. We all like the warmer weather, right? We do. And we're happy that it's getting warmer and warmer because, come on, we're tired of winter, right? We're tired of snow. This snow was, this year, or this winter was hard, at least for me, because this is my second winter in Pennsylvania. The first one was very nice. It snowed twice. And I think that was like just the welcome package of coming to Pennsylvania. And then this year is just like, well, this is the real deal. And I hope that you're cherishing these moments because this past winter is in the past, and we're going to remember it for I don't know how long. Because people were telling me, well, this is not the worst winter we had. We had even worse some years ago. But I believe it ranks somewhere up higher on the scale. You know, we're glad to be here. March 1st, another month is going by, and the more we get more into the summer, the more we have things happening in the church, and the more we see people in the church, and that is something good. And I just want to say that if this is your first time, please feel welcome. We're happy that you're here. We love to see you again and again. And if you're just passing by, we hope that you'll have one of your best Sabbaths ever. And this is what we aim for as a church. That's why we exist as a church. To make sure that we have a meaningful experience, a meaningful worship towards God. So today, I want to continue with the theme that we've been doing since the beginning of the year, and this is the last month, which is loving Jesus. And the question I always ask is, how can we love Jesus more? And again, I want to ask you, how many of you think you can improve in your love toward Jesus? I think all of us, right? We all want to love Jesus more. And today we're going to look at a different aspect than we've been looking before at, which is how can we embrace the prodigals as a reflection of our love to Jesus? What does it mean to embrace prodigals? I want to start with a story that happened right here in Pennsylvania in 1996. There was a 38-year-old security guard at a Pennsylvania middle school who convinced a 14-year-old girl by the name of Tanya Cash to leave her father and live with him. For the next 10 years, this security guard kept her captive in the home that he shared with his elderly parents. To keep her from running away, her captor convinced her that no one is looking for her. Her parents, they don't even care about her. He was telling her, you're stupid, you're immature, nobody cares about you. Only me cares about you, that's why you have to stay with me. Now, after a while, Tanya's trust with this security guard increased. And when her confidence increased, he started allowing her to leave the house for a little short time whenever he goes to work. Now, at that time, she would have been to the grocery store or the local deli mart. And as she went there over the time, she became friends with the owner of that deli mart, who eventually, in March 2006, told his son, who is a retired police officer, about her story, and after she convinced who really she is to him. And he made sure that she was rescued and reunited with her father. Commenting on her situation, the deli mart owner said, she wanted to be wanted. That's all. Her father, who had desperately tried to find her over the years, even he put flyers everywhere. He put her picture on the milk boxes. He said, there wasn't a day that went by I didn't think of her. I just say, thank you, there is a God, and he brought my little girl back home. Now, for 10 years, this little girl was living in a nightmare. She was kidnapped, captive. She was stripped of her freedom, her identity, and her dignity. Every day was a battle for survival. Every moment was filled with hopelessness. She was trapped, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Can you imagine this? Being trapped, captive for a decade, in chains. A decade of believing that no one was coming for you, that no one cares about you. A decade of wondering if you are still loved or even remembered. But then one day, it all happened. She got her freedom. After years of suffering, she was rescued. And she asked herself the question, can I be accepted again? Will people look at me and only see my past? Will I ever be whole? Today, we're going to look at a similar story that Jesus told in the book of Luke. And this is the story of the prodigal son, or the way I like to say it, the prodigal sons. And we're going to see what does it really mean to love Jesus by loving the prodigals that he longs to embrace. So let's start with our scripture. We're going to start Luke 15, verses 11 to 16, and I want us to focus on how bad is the situation, okay? So when we read, think of how bad is the situation. Verse 11 says, and then he said, that is Jesus, a certain man had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. Now, let me start by saying that this is the most extreme example or story you can ever hear about a prodigal. This is the most extreme one. But Jesus was putting it this way to show us a point. We see a younger son who asked his father for his share of the inheritance while his father was still alive. He was essentially telling his dad, well, I wish you were dead. I'm done with you. I want to live my own life. And such rebelliousness was treated as a capital offense. The only way you treat this kind of a kid is I don't want to say it, but I think we all know. It's a capital offense. But the younger son, what does he do? Takes his money, takes everything, leaves home, travels to a distant place where he wasted all. The story continues in verse 14. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. So what happens after that to make things even worse? A famine happens. It compounded the problem because at that time, even the barest necessities will be so expensive. And I think we lived in a couple of years ago and we saw that how everything has just went straight up. When we had COVID, everything was so expensive. When you have something like this, people were trading toilet paper for food because it was so expensive. But then happens a famine. It does not stop there, but as a Jew, he was not supposed to be associated or united with Gentiles who were unclean. And he did that because of his need. Worse than that, this young man had to feed pigs. The worst thing ever for a Jew. You know, if you want to, for a Jew to be angry, so angry at you and wanting to kill you, is if that you call them as a pig, or you show them a pig, or you try to feed them a pig. That was the worst thing ever. But this young man had to do that to survive. So he had the most degrading form of employment. But apparently, due to the famine, his employer took advantage of him. He was providing him with only the barest sustenance. That's why he was so hungry that he longed to eat the pig's food, which, in case he took and ate, would be fired, and then he'll be left to die without even any food. But when we look at the story, I'm sure all of us are faring better than this young man, right? I'm sure that none of us reached that level in our life, physically. But spiritually, we've all been there. Spiritually, we were in a similar situation. We wanted to be free from the restraints that we thought our relationship with our Father, with God, is going to bring to our life. Yes, Baba. Thank you. It's okay, Baba. You're too young to preach now. But spiritually, we all were in that similar situation where we thought that our relationship with our God is going to put some restraints on us and is going to make us not happy. We wanted to go to a far country, as far as possible from God, because we thought this is where freedom was. But I want us to notice one thing. What brought the prodigal back was his need, not theology. This is the first lesson out of three lessons that we're going to learn today. What brought him back was his need, not theology. Verse 17, it says, "But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. How many of us were in his shoes, spiritually speaking? We've all been there. We enjoy living life in the way that we think is right. We indulge in different prodigal living, no matter what it is and no matter how extreme it is. But then a day comes when we realize and we feel that we are empty. Nothing is filling that emptiness in our life, and that we need to do something about it. Everything in life loses its meaning, and suddenly we have the need for something more that is nothing in this world can fill it. This prodigal son realized that need after going through this hard time. And when we think about prodigals, how many prodigals are in our community around us who have needs and want to be filled with something meaningful? Our first inclination is to do what? Call out their sin, right? We let them know, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't be in that situation. If you've been in church, instead of being somewhere else, you would have not done this. And I've heard many people say this. We start telling them, well, you need to keep the 10 Commandments and you need to change everything that you do in your life for you to have a better life. That's our first inclination. We start giving them examples from the Bible about all these bad stories and how they ended just because they didn't follow God, and we start scaring them. That is our first inclination. Theology does not win people's hearts. Love does. And if somebody went to that prodigal and started telling him, well, you're doing this and you're doing that and your sin is this and your sin is that, what is he going to do? He will never come back. So when we exclude ourselves from our communities by not being systematically and intentionally involved in these communities, we lose the ability to speak to their lives and we mute ourselves. The irony is many times we do like, what do you call them? We do like the turtles in the cartoon movies. When they see something they don't like, what do? They hide in their shells. And that's what we do many times. Unfortunately, we hide inside our shells and we pretend like, well, inside everything is good, everything is nice and cozy and warm. Outside, I don't care. And we break that bridge that we can have with the people outside. We miss many opportunities to make a difference in someone's life, in a prodigal's life. That's why we need to be there for people, to notice that we care about them. And we can make a difference in the community's well-being, by just being there. When we show them that we care about them, and we care about their needs. When we think about the prodigal son, he had two needs. He had the need for basic necessities, and he had the need for community. And this is something that all of us can give to people around us. Basic necessities and a community. And I want to focus on the community because, we give basic necessities most of the time, but we stop doing the community part. We just give people what they need and we wish them well and we just let them go, instead of being there in person as a community. So we need to be there to help them by being there. Somebody that they can run to whenever they find themselves in problem, knowing that they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be put down or mocked. And when we look around us, in the community around, there are many people who are feeling lonely. They need somebody to be there for them. That somebody can be you. Another important lesson we learn from this story: killing sacred cows and reaching lost people go hand in hand. What do I mean? Let's read verses 20 to 24. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. We can have our sacred calves, or we can have our prodigals. The choice is ours. We can't have both. And when we look at the reaction of the father, we can see and we realize what his priorities were. What did he value the most? When you think about that fatted calf, could have been food for months. But what did the father do? He said, kill it. This was not just a small celebration, a family gathering. The father, the two sons. No. That was a celebration for the whole town. And that celebration lasted for days. The last verse says they began to be merry. Well, they're still going on. They're still marrying. They're being happy. They're celebrating. This was no secret or shameful return, because his son was worth more than all the wealth that he had, and he was willing to give it all up for his safe return. This celebration was something big, something worth it. Because after all, he gave his son the best robe. That is his own robe. He gave him his ring, and that is authority. And he gave him sandals, which means that he's his son, he's a master, he's not a slave. He restored him fully to his rightful place as a rightful owner and inheritor, as a son, as not a slave. Now, the question for us today is, what are our sacred cows? You know, whether you realize it or not, every church has sacred cows. Every church has sacred cows that we must kill. That can be, this is how we do things here. That's a sacred cow. Just because programs, that's a sacred cow. And you can fill in the blanks as many as you want. But I'm talking about churches that do things just because they've been doing them for the last 100 years. Whether they're working or not, we're still doing it just because, well, that's what we do. That's what we know. Whether they impact lives or not, we do them just because. And we still insist on doing them. And it becomes something sacred we cannot touch. You know, this reminds me of a story. One time, back home, we had a visitor comes to the church, and after the church service, as he's leaving, he asked, Pastor, tell me, why do you stand 7 times during service? I never counted that before. But during that service, when I looked at the bulletin, we stand 7 times. But why? Well, this is how we've always done it, and we don't know why. But people who come to the church notice everything. Notice everything that we do that doesn't have a meaning. Yeah, maybe 7 means it's a perfect number and it was a coincidence. But that's something that we've been doing without noticing why. There are many things that we consider as sacred above everything else that does not have biblical basis. And most of the time, these things hinder returning the prodigals. These things, they're like there but the door closed, not letting anybody in. That's why we need to have a serious evaluation of everything that we do, because I'm sorry to say that, and many people might not like it, but we don't exist as a church for ourselves. We're not here to please ourselves as church members. We exist for those who are outside. And the more we think about ourselves, the more those outside are not going to come unless they fit with the shape that we already made, the prefabricated shape thing that we want them to look like and be like and do like. And many times, can help us to evaluate everything we do is very simple. Why do we do this? When we say, well, let's do so and so, why do we do this? That's first question. Second question, has this been helpful to us in the past? If yes, good. If not, why? And the third question is, how this has been helpful for our visitors, for the community. It might be very helpful for us. We like coming together in our shell and enjoying each other's company. Yeah, that's nice. But how can we help those prodigals? That's why we need to kill these sacred cows in order to have the prodigals. And not just that. Third thing, that we need to be angry at what God is angry at. Verse 25 says, now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. Oh, that's a red flag, right? Music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. Verses 29 to 32. So he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who had devoured your livelihood with the harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. So let me ask you this, what makes you angry? What makes you angry? When we look at this older son, he was angry because of unspoken expectations that came out of his selfish nature. Yes, he was faithfully serving his father all this time, in contrast to his lazy brother, who just wanted to spend money. Yeah, that's true. But he wanted to celebrate with his friends. What does this mean? Well, the older son didn't enjoy the father's company either. He wanted to be away. He was not serving his father. He was not obedient out of love, but out of obligation. Well, I'm the oldest son and I have to do things. He also wanted to be away. So as his younger brother went away and enjoyed his life, the older brother envied that. He was jealous. He wanted to have the same experience. I want to go and celebrate. I want to go and have a small goat with me and my friends. And many times we find ourselves in the older brother's shoes. Sometimes we're angry because sinners do the things that we wish we can do, but we have a stronger willpower not to do it. Sometimes we haven't overcome our sin, but we don't do it because we're afraid to lose our eternity. And sometimes we just keep thinking about it. We don't hate it. We don't overcome it. We still long for it. I wish I can do that, but I can't. Otherwise, I'm going to go to hell. And many times, we don't hate sin, yet we criticize sin in others. You know, another thing that angers people is that they look different than they are. You know, when you look at the story, the younger brother did not look like he belonged, because guess what? He was feeding pigs all the last time. He was dirty, he was filthy, most probably his clothes were teared down, and he didn't look like he fit in. He wasn't wearing his suit and his best tie, and he didn't look like that. And the older brother thought, well, he does not belong in here. He's no longer welcome because he was filthy. And that happens many times when people show up at our church. Just because they look different, that makes us angry. You know, one time, another story from back home. We were having church service, and one of the guests, we asked to do special music. And by the way, Hazel was a great special music today. We appreciate that. We enjoyed it. But that guest went up to the podium, and she sang, and she went down. After church, one of the other church members comes to me and she says, "Pastor, why did you allow that woman to go up in the front?" I said, wait, what's going on? Is there anything wrong with that? She said, she was not wearing a skirt, she was wearing pants. I said, did you go and talk to her, say thank you for the music? She said, no. I said, did you go and talk to her and tell her we're happy that you're at church? No, but she's not wearing it. And many times that's what angers us. Many times that's what makes us so negatively talking to people, just because we want them to look like us, we want them to be like us, and we want them to fit the standards that we have put on people that have no biblical basis. Is that what should make us angry? Well, let me tell you what makes God angry. Proverbs 6:16-19. These 6 things the Lord hates, yes, 7 are an abomination to him: a proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift to running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. These are the things that make God angry. Not what people look like and what people do and the ignorance that they have. No. When we are angry about everything, people are going to discount us. The attitude of hostility toward others, even if it's just in our hearts. Yes, we smile to them, welcome, but inside we know, well, this person needs to change, otherwise they're... When we have this attitude, we will always be separated from others, from those who are in need. That's why we need to have a shift in focus. Focus outside, not inside. And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about the church. Focus outside, not inside. Focus on what you can do for others rather than what you can benefit from being in church. Focus on how you can help others. Someone said, the loudest voices are the least important ones. The loudest voices are the least important ones. Why? Because those who do things don't complain. Those who do things don't complain. When we're focused on serving, when we're focused on others, when we're focused on how we can help others, we don't argue about destructive things that do not matter to God. So I want to end with 3 things that we shouldn't do that the older brother did. It's like a reverse thing, but bear with me. What shouldn't we do? 3 things. First thing, the older brother did nothing to stop his brother from leaving. Verses 11-12 says, Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of the goods that falls to me. So he divided to them his livelihood. We don't see the older brother at all. He's not there. He didn't try to stop his brother or even change his mind before leaving. He was not involved at all. He was just a spectator. And when he was involved, he was not intervening positively. Because he never calls his brother, my brother. He says, your son. Now this reminds me of me and Vanessa at home. Whenever Samer does something bad, they tell her, well, your son did this. But that's our inclination, is that, we don't want to have to do anything with the bad things other people do, so we just discount them. And he said, but as soon as this son of yours came, when people, or when someone is baptized, what do we do to welcome them? Statistics show that within the Adventist Church, 43% of those baptized and new believers do not leave the church because of doctrinal issues. They don't leave just because they don't agree with something the church teaches. They leave mostly because nobody talked to them when they left. Nobody reached out to them when they left. And I'm not talking about the pastor not reaching out to them. No. The church did not reach out to them when they left. So why wasn't the older brother involved positively? Why wasn't he doing anything to stop his brother from leaving? Verse 29 tells us, so he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I make merry with my friends. Do you notice what is the problem here? The problem isn't that the older brother is not friendly. The problem is that we're not friendly. The problem is that we're friendly only with our friends. The older brother wanted to celebrate, but he wanted to go with his friends. He didn't want to celebrate with his brother. And that's what we do many times. We are friendly with our friends, with my circle, with the people that I know for many, many years. And if somebody new comes in, that's a threat. I'm not going to be friendly to them. He was not willing to be involved in his younger brother's life, not even with his family in general. He wanted to stay outside. He didn't want to go in. All he wanted is just to be with his friends. That's all he cared about. And this individualistic mindset, what destroys churches today. People come in and they leave, nobody talks to them. Well, I'm not going to go back to that place if nobody's even said hi to me. So he did nothing to stop his brother from leaving. And when he was involved, he was not involved positively. Number 2, he didn't search for his brother when he was gone. Verse 30 tells us that he knew what his brother was doing, yet he did nothing to attempt to go and get him. But how did he know what his brother was doing? Two options. Either he went there and saw what he was doing and did nothing about it, or he heard about him and did nothing about it. His brother wasn't around the corner that he sees him every day. No, he was in a far country. Yet, somehow, he knows that his brother was spending all his money on his friends and on prodigal livings. It is easier to criticize from afar than to get into the pig pen and pull people out. It's very easy to sit and just say, I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. That's why many times when people tell me, Pastor, I don't like this, you know the first thing I tell them? What do you suggest we do? Because it's very easy to criticize just for the sake of criticizing. It's easy to talk about other people's problems rather than help them with their problems. We all say we want to reach sinners, right? How many of us want to reach sinners? All of us, right? But what kind of level of sin that we're comfortable with? You know, if they lie, that's okay. But if they drink, no, that's not my specialty, right? What level of sin are we comfortable with? And how far are we willing to go to bring people back to God? How far are we willing to go to bring prodigals to God? Number 3, he was not happy when his brother came back. You know, many times we have selective amnesia. That is like selective hearing. And when I talk about selective hearing, the first person pops in my mind is my mom. When she started losing her hearing, she became professional at doing that. You know, we'll be asking her, well, Mom, did you do lunch? She ignores that. You know, she doesn't hear this at all. And then we ask her to do anything else, she just ignored that. So we said, we're going to test it to see if she really hears or she's really deaf. So what we did is that we started like kind of gossiping away from her in the other side of the room in a low voice. She heard everything. Every single word, she heard it. So she has selective hearing. She hears whatever she wants and she ignores whatever she wants. We too have something called selective amnesia. We don't remember where God brought us from. We're here today, we're good, we're nice, we're clean, we're living in a good life, and we forget where we were. And sometimes, if we want to remember, we were worse than other people that we're criticizing. Maybe we were not as far as that prodigal. Maybe our sin didn't go on the headlines, make the trending list on the internet. But many times we forget also that sin is sin to God, no matter how big it is. In terms of your salvation, it doesn't matter if you lie or kill somebody, it's the same thing. That's why God throws a party every time a prodigal comes back. So instead of sitting back criticizing new converts, step in and mentor them. Help them to grow spiritually. But that's going to take somebody who is spiritually mature to do this. So first, we need to work on ourselves to be spiritually mature while we're mentoring others to grow spiritually. We shouldn't be like the older brother who refused to go in. He's just standing outside making a fit. He just wants to make a point. I'm not going in. He called his brother, your son. He had his list of demands before he was willing to accept his brother as his brother. What is our list of demands to accept new converts in the church? Someone said the one who contributes the least demands the most. That's why, don't be angry. Be involved. Be active. So how do we love Jesus? How does this reflect on our love to Jesus? 3 things. Return to Him daily. As a person, we all sin. We all have problems. We all have issues in our life. We need to be confessing and repenting every day of our lives and restore our intimacy with Christ. Number 2, receive His grace. Stop striving and embrace the love that Jesus offers. And that means that you surrender everything. It doesn't matter how long you've been in church. You still can receive His grace today. Number 3, rejoice in others' restoration. Celebrate when others return to God, just as the Father rejoices, and be there to help them in their spiritual journey. The story ends without us knowing if the older son accepted the invitation and went in. We don't know. But we get the implication that the roles were switched. Remember at the beginning I told you prodigal sons? Because both of them are prodigals. Different times, but similar result. The older son is now the prodigal son, and the younger one is no longer a prodigal son. So how do we respond when prodigals return? Do we remind them of their mistakes? Do we question whether they're worthy of love? Or do we love them the way that Jesus does, with open arms and with grace? You know, I believe that Jesus left the story without an ending, that part without ending, because He wants each one of us to answer for ourselves. Are we going to go in and celebrate? Or are we going to just stay outside? Are we going to embrace the prodigal, help him or her to become what Jesus wants them to be one day, to reach the potential that they can reach if they were under the right mentoring? Every day of our lives, we make that choice. Every time we have encounters with people, we have the choice to be like the Father, to be like God, or to be like the prodigal son, or even to be like the older son. The choice is ours. And that choice can affect people for eternity. Every time we don't show care, we don't show grace, and we don't show love, people are being lost. Amen. As we close, let us sing hymn number